live here. Make a few adjustments. Yeah, that seems about centered. Get my light set. How is everybody doing out there? Good evening. Welcome to Sunday at Mike's. Good to be here again, as usual. It is a wet and rainy Amsterdam night, so appropriate kind of just stay and chill and listen to me ramble on kind of night. Yeah, how's everybody out there doing this week? I'm trying to adjust my camera here. Sometimes if I look this way, I know I'm looking into the camera, but for some reason I'm drawn into looking at myself. It's just one of those things that you do when you're doing these YouTube things. You have to really watch where you're looking as far as cameras are concerned. Yeah, I have a lot of topics tonight actually to talk about. Hey, Mike. Hey, welcome back. I'm doing fine. I appreciate you asking. Nothing really spectacular to report this week. Hey, Ben, good to see you. Good to see everybody. Now, I got a lot of topics for tonight. It's kind of a spoiler. Well, you should have already seen it. I did it yesterday. I released it, so it wouldn't be too much of a spoiler. But a good friend of this channel, Mickey Newman, sent me this Tone City pedal. Hey, welcome. Oh, well, you're doing well as well. And I did a review of it, so if you haven't checked out that video, check it out. It's kind of cool. It really gets into just the unboxing of it. I will get into a little bit of how it sounds. I have to tell you, if you guys haven't watched it, I got sent a pedal by Mickey, who's one of you guys know Mickey. Sent this pedal over to me, and really, I had a Tone City spring reverb, so I had experience with Tone City pedals. As you know, the Tone City reverb, I was, it was an interesting reverb tone, but it wasn't really a spring reverb, which was what I was looking for. There's a certain drippiness, is what they call it, to a spring reverb. Hey! Greetings from Detroit. Wow, Detroit's in the house. That's awesome. So I didn't know what to expect from this pedal from them, but boy, wow, this thing is actually pretty cool. It's actually designed in conjunction with Ed Koch, I want to say is his name. He has a guitar shop. He deals in vintage guitars. You guys may know him from YouTube. But he got together with the Tone City guys, who are a company in China. They've been making pedals, for a long time. So very experienced makers. And came up with this design. This pedal is actually based off of a circuit called the Sweet Honey. I believe. And then that one is based off something called the Mad Professor. See, with a lot of these pedals, you can see there's iterations that go through time of these pedals of how they basically start with the original like a clone, and then you'll eventually get something like this. Hey, everybody's checking in. Awesome. You end up with a clone copy, exact copy, no for no copy like the one that I have. Or you'll get, division, different divisions off from that sound structure, that circuit structure. And this one, again, like I said, is about 2 or 3 generations from its original. But it is really originally all supposed to be based on a AC30. So it really comes down to a souped up AC30 sounding kind of amp, if that gives you any kind of place of reference, point of reference. And I got to tell you, you want to keep it, sweet spot for me is around 8 or 9 o'clock. But it has the note definition and separation kind of aspects that I'm looking for that I get out of this Series 7 pedal. Hey, everybody's checking in. Awesome. And really, seriously, it is an awesome sounding pedal for less than $50. It can be had. If you're looking for, it's not a heavy overdrive pedal, so you're not going to find yourself doing any kind of metal licks or anything like that with it. But if you're looking for a good light overdrive pedal, this one really works, and I love it. It has, again, the tonal qualities of an even more expensive pedal, 4 or 5 times as much, 5 times as much the cost. So that's got something going for it, I have to say. And also, what else can I say about it? Yeah, for a mass-produced pedal, that's not bad. That's actually pretty cool that you can get that kind of. And again, like I said, it's kind of a needle in a haystack kind of situation. But every now and then you'll come across a pretty good one, and this one pretty good actually. I actually like it a little bit better than my Series 7 that it's replacing on the pedal board for right now because the Series 7 has a distinct fuzz kind of vibe to it. It's a fuzzy kind of circuit that they put in that. Again, it's based on a Vox amp, the Series 7 amp that had a built-in fuzz in it. Dig that. The amp had a built-in fuzz circuit in it. And it was actually one of the first half solid state, half tube amp combo kind of amps. So that a lot of things going forward. But that little bit of hint of fuzz is cool sometimes, but really actually I like to be able to dial it out with this. You can get a similar kind of tone to that with this Little Heat is what it's called, Little Heat pedal. So I'm glad he sent it because I think it's awesome. I'm kind of using it. So, there's that. Okay. First, guys, I want to, where's my reading glasses? Oh, here they are. I want to read something to you guys. First, we're going to start off tonight talking about a subject that I touched upon a little bit before. Hey, Mickey, we're just talking about you. Good to see you, sir. So I'm going to put on my reading glasses. A little bit last week, I was talking about, where did vintage come from? Where were the origins of vintage? I'm just going to look at myself. If I keep looking this way, I know I'm looking at you guys. I'm looking in the camera, but I'm just going to look this way because it's a lot easier. So I touched upon the origins of where I had read and studied and researched about where vintage, the concept of vintage guitars came from. So really, it's a history that kind of takes place in the 60s because of the advent of the commercialization of rock music, or how music just kind of just grew. If you're a producer of 500 guitars like Leo Fender was, right before he sold to CBS, but you've got a demand for 5,000. You're going to need some serious reinvestment in order to make that kind of transition, or to make that kind of production transition, or you say to yourself, I don't want to make guitars that way, and you sell out, and that's what he did. That's how it kind of worked that way. And of course, when CBS took things over, they began changing production because of cost. We've talked about the same thing with Gibson. Same kind of concept. But one aspect that regarding vintage guitars, and of course, and all of those changes, the reason I mention those, is because it really heralds to when guys started doing things like I'm going to read to you right now. So let's do a little small. I'm not going to read a lot, but I do want, because I'm always studying, as you guys, I'm kind of a nerd. So I was reading this and I found it very interesting. Now, this guy is a vintage guitar dealer. He's been so for decades by the point that he wrote this. And he writes, can you really be sure that the neck on your 63 Strat is the one Fender put on and not another 63 neck from another guitar? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that every vintage store that got two 63 Strats avoided the temptation to take that refretted neck or original body guitar and swap parts with that original neck refinished body guitar? In other words, swap necks. You're naive if you don't think that this didn't go on. In the early days, stuff like that was rampant. Once again, I'm not saying it was right. It was a different time and the sensibility was different. You had businessmen trying to make money and players that wanted the guitar the way they wanted it. Personally, I wasn't trying to, again, he was a dealer. I wasn't trying to fool anyone. I thought these changes are exactly what they were. They were restoration, not counterfeiting. If two bolt-on neck guitars like Fender Strats, both made in June 1964, get a neck swap for whatever reason, is this counterfeiting? So he goes through this and he talks about the fact that you had, and this is talking about in the 70s, you had a lot of guys who were dealers and worked in shops, and they were swapping parts on guitars. At that time, they weren't, again, as I point out to you, they weren't considered to be vintage per se. But they were considered to be preferred because, like I said, with Fender switching over to CBS and Gibson switching over, you had guys at that time who felt that, of course, these earlier guitars were superior for a myriad amount of reasons. But, you know, you would get two of these 63 Strats in, one needed a refret, one didn't. Guess what would happen? If you had a customer coming in saying, I need a 63 Strat, right now, they're going to swap necks, which is what this guy is saying occurred. And that occurred a lot, he's saying. So, basically, CBS bought Fender in 1965 and decided to put an F on the neck plate. Everyone that had a 1965 Strat or Tele or P-Bass or Jazz Bass or Jazzmaster or Jaguar wanted the cooler L-type plate that appears in early 1965's bases the latter 1965 CBS style F-plate models. See, and when you start getting into this kind of minutia, you understand why you want to stay away from vintage things, because even in 1 year, because of the buyout, there's a preference there in the back plate. So a whole industry cropped up of guitar freaks robbing the L plate off their Mustangs and other cheaper Fender models and throwing them on their Strats and Teles, just to make doubly sure that they could tell everyone that their Strat was pre-CBS. They also took the neck off and with some 600 grit sandpaper gently sanded the date off the bottom of the neck. So this is just a history that this guy goes through of the shenanigans, just a summation of shenanigans that went on in the guitar market back in the 70s. Now you fast forward here to 2023 and you walk into a guitar shop and you're looking at buying a 65 Strat, you better think twice. Because again, even though the dealer has it hanging on his shelf and he's saying, oh, this is what it is, and we you better have some real provenance. And you also better have a way of by provenance, I mean from what store was it bought in 1965 and who's owned it everybody who's owned it since then with a receipt for those purchases. Because honestly speaking, if somebody within this chain of that guitar's lifetime says, hey, that guitar was stolen from me, and you end up buying it in 2023 for whatever, $60,000, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where that person has the legal right to say this guitar is stolen. Now, are you going to get your money back from the dealer or, heaven forbid, a second party that you bought it from? Probably not. So, I start this off tonight touching on this subject because I find it fascinating that there were so many pitfalls. You guys remember that old Atari game Pitfall? It's like that in the vintage market. Seriously, you better really know your stuff if you're going to get into a vintage guitars. Now, this is putting aside whether I feel that modern guitars are, or vintage guitars are better than modern guitars. I don't. Again, like I said, the manufacturing process, just all the plastics. You know, Fender had to replace their plastics because they began to fall apart after just a couple of years, after a year or two, back in the 60s. So, you know, the manufacturing of every part of the guitar now is far superior than it was at that time. But anyway, I talked about this subject to say there's a lot of pitfalls in buying vintage guitars. If you really don't have a very strong idea of what it is that you're looking to purchase, you're probably going to find yourself in, you know, a situation where you may think you have something that you actually don't. Or, and again, this guy is one dealer and he's talking about himself and all his buddies. How many dealers across the United States and the UK in the 1970s were doing the same things? Because again, these guitars weren't considered to be vintage because they weren't, or anything special. They had a preference over the guitars that were bought in, you know, that were pre-CBS or pre whatever with Gibson. But they really just had a free-for-all when it came to swapping parts on these guitars. And I remember that. You know, again, I didn't really start getting into guitar until the late 70s myself. But I have to honestly say that, guys, excuse me 1 minute. I've got a cat meowing. My goodness. Sorry about that, guys. I trapped the cat in the hallway. This poor guy was trapped. If you really don't know what it is that you're doing when it comes to these vintage guitars, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're really just setting yourself up for disaster. So I read that article, I share that article with you to really just kind of just give you the sense that it's just a dangerous thing to do to invest in vintage guitars. That's all there is to that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about that kind of leads into that tonight, the second subject is something called the placebo effect. And this one is interesting because it kind of ties into the vintage things. Vintage guitars sound better as opposed to modern ones. And it's another subject that, again, guys, I'm sorry, I'm a super nerd when it comes to these things. I love to study this stuff. I really do love to just dig into things. Why, again, a lot of it has to do with marketing. You know, why does certain marketing work, the psychology of that? I have a slight interest in that. And I think I've also talked to you guys about marketing and the kind of things that are put out there, the statements that are made in order to entice you to buy things, of course. Certainly no different from the marketing department, from Fender or Gibson or whoever, PRS. But there's something called the placebo effect that I kind of got hip to here this week. And basically what it's talking about is how there are no differences in the way that we perceive them with guitars other than the ones that we go to that guitar with. Okay, let me unpack what I mean by that. There's a lot in there. It's kind of a weird statement. Basically, if I think that A guitar is going to have more sustain than B guitar, when I go to play that guitar, I'm going to play it in such a manner to make that kind of mental evaluation come true. Whereas with the other guitar, I would play it, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't play it in such a way. I would just kind of slag it off, as they say in the UK. So this guy came up with this concept. He said that's exactly what happens when we start getting into tone woods, when we start getting into sustain, pickups, a lot of all the factors that we cumulatively judge a guitar by. I'm not getting into color or anything like that. As a matter of fact, we're going to get into that a little bit later. I come up with another. I've come up with another list. But no, what he's really talking about is the subjectiveness of a guitar, whether you know. And he says this goes beyond the concept of it's in the tone is in the fingers. He says no, it really starts in the player and how they approach that instrument. And maybe because we think that one guitar in our collection has more sustain than the others, uh, he says that this may or may not be true. And what you may be experiencing is a placebo effect, that it has no more sustain than the others in your collection or others that you've played in the guitar shop. It's just how you perceive that guitar when you first played it. Hey, this has got a lot of sustain to it. So that guitar forever from now on in your mind is going to be the sustained guitar. And also it is going to be the one that you're going to judge others by. So it's an interesting concept. And you know, it's one of the reasons that I don't do a lot of like sound demos on my channel as well. Because again, my rig, your rig, they're just two different things. And whether it works for me or whether it works for you or not is really subjective. But what I can do, as an example with this little heat pedal, is I can give you my impressions of it based on how I feel about it, what it sounds like, and try to be as descriptive as possible. Try to really to get into what is it, and where in the tone family does this sit. Like I said, this sits in the AC 30 tone family, and so that I can do. But the doing tone, going through doing tone tests, I do them. I just recently, a few weeks ago, I did another one, a blind test, and but I really when I did that blind test and I listened to it and I got the responses back on it, I really began to realize that it's really my rig. Maybe if another person, not maybe, if another person did the same thing that I did on their rig, it would sound different as well. So there's that. And I wonder how much the placebo effect really plays into our perceptions on some of our instruments. And he gets into another thing about pickups and how the original PAFs, for example, from the 50s are no better than the ones now. Really, there's no improvement on wires and magnets. Even, again, getting into the fact that manufacturing these days is far superior than it was to then. Then they would wind the pickup still. The counter was full, or the bobbin was full. Now they can really precisely computerize, put in how many winds they do, and be precise from pickup to pickup to pickup. Those pickups back in the 50s, everyone was different. And they weren't all magical. I remember a guy offered me a 1960 PAF. He offered me for $2,000. He said, "I'll let you have it for $2,000." I was like, you know what? That pickup costs more than the guitar that I'm going to put it in. And it was a Gibson, so no, I'm good. I never believed in the PAF hype. And this guy says the placebo effect has a lot to do with that as well, because we've been told or conditioned, or we have the supposition that older pickups are somehow superior because they're older. There's that. Is that true or not? Probably not. Probably not. And actually, I know it's not. But the placebo effect. So I thought I would throw that also out there with you guys to chew on. I find it interesting. Like I said, I've given up chasing the dragon of trying to replicate the sound of my Guitar Heroes a long time ago, and began to ask myself the question is, what is my guitar sound? What is my tone? You know, within the structure of what is my tone overall compositionally wise with my music. And when you take that kind of twist, which we all do eventually, we all grow out of that, except for the super fanboys and hobbyists. But we all search our own tone, and it's a really subjective thing. My tone is my tone, yours is yours. Do I think the placebo effect has any validity to it? I think there's a little something to it. I think he may be onto something there. I do think we hear what we want to hear and we shut out what we don't. We do that in our regular lives. We hear what we want to hear, we shut out what we don't. Why would that be any different on any level of what comes into our ears and our brain? And so, something to think about. Something to think about. I enjoy, guys, last week's show. First of all, I had no idea it was the Super Bowl. No clue. I was wondering why I had nobody, none of you guys were showing up. That shows you how far off I am from really things. I had no clue. I was wondering why are my numbers so low. And it ended up, and another thing I'll say, I'm never going to talk about the subject of acoustic guitars again because that ended up being one of my lower rated live streams as well. I don't know. Of all my live streams, the numbers start. Thank you guys, by the way, for that so much. It's because of you. Numbers are starting to get up there, but I'm starting to notice that there's some subjects that just don't resonate. And I've been asked to talk about acoustic guitar, so I spent a little bit of time on the subject last week, and titled it as such in order to attract people who are interested in that subject, my viewpoint on the subject. But my goodness gracious, low viewership on that. So with the Super Bowl thing and you guys not showing up and the low viewership that I got over the week, I will not be covering acoustic guitars again anytime soon. Unless I get a vintage Martin D5 or something like that. It's just the truth of it, It's weird how it is, and I don't do these, of course, with the a little bit, but I don't do these necessarily with the mindset of what's going to attract. You do have to have a little bit of that, but I kind of like to talk about, as you guys know, about the things that I'm interested in. And as you can see, that I'm constantly studying and researching. So really, honestly, yeah, it just is a subject just doesn't seem to be resonating out there, which is interesting because you would think that with the stats that Fender gave us, right, about the amount of players out there, they did note that a lot of those were acoustic players, but that doesn't seem to be following through in anything that I've seen. I don't know what you guys think, but I just don't see acoustic guitars being such the hot topic. Anyway, I have a list I liked the list last week. So this week I thought I would come up with a list of reasons why we do buy things. So when we decide to purchase something, when we decide to buy a guitar or something, why do we do it? So there's a little bit of humor in here. I've tried to make it a little bit of humorous flavor to it, humor. It is a list that I think that is true though. And we're going to hit on a few points of what I have here. One of the reasons that people say that they are going to buy something that they don't necessarily need to have is they don't have the current configuration. For a hot minute, I once I got my Squier 40th anniversary back. Got basically a telly back into my regular rotation. I really started to look at the tellies with the PF, the humbucker neck pickup, 70s tellies, because I never played one, and I began to get a little curious. I'm gonna have to put on my glasses, guys. Sorry. Like your show's always great topics. Oh, thank you. I should be wearing these anywhere to read this list. Oh yeah, that's much better. I can actually read my writing. um, I really started to look at that because I didn't have that configuration. So that's true. I don't have the current configuration, so I've got to have it. Now I began to think about it, and I said to myself, well, there's no way that a telly, even with a humbucker in the neck, is going to sound close to you would get in the neck pickup and what I already have. I already have a Les Paul for the neck pickup. I don't really need a Telecaster with one. So that went out the window. But that is something that comes up. You do think, and maybe you guys have had that thought, I don't have the current configuration. Another one is a killer color or top. It's funny. You look at two guitars of the same model, made the same day, but if one color strikes your fancy, that's the one. And tops and things like that. It's interesting. Another thing that I was reading is that with Gibson, with the so-called flame top guitars they had, they weren't doing that because they thought that flame tops were a premium at that time in the 50s. No, they were doing it because they were actually copying what violin makers at that time were doing with the backs of violins. They were putting these flame backs. So they took that and they transferred it to the tops of Les Pauls, just as a figuring thing. But it wasn't, it wasn't a premium. They were just doing it as a way of finishing it to justify the prices that they were asking for it. The colors and the tops and things like that are a big selling point. I was looking at a Hello Kitty guitar today. It was a Strat with a Hello Kitty in the middle, and it was black, but somehow it still looked cool. So yeah, color is something that attracts us. We have to be honest about that. I've been playing, this one is definitely me. I've been playing X guitar for years. Why not try a Y? Well, that's how I got started on playing the Les Paul. I was a Tele guy. I didn't know this because I wasn't really keeping up with him, but my Uncle Carlton, who was also a guitar player in the family, played for Fats Domino and led a couple of his own bands. He was also a Tele guy. So again, like I said, I guess Tele's running in the blood. But I said, I've been playing a Telecaster for years. Let me try a Les Paul because maybe I can get a deeper tone out of it. Tone chasing. So that literally, if I count it up in my head, I hate to say that, the 10, we're getting in the tens of thousands of dollars that, at least the tens of thousands of dollars that I've spent on Les Pauls. And how chasing that rabbit is a dangerous one. It sounds simple. I've been playing Y guitar for years. Why not try, X? Yeah. Go ahead and do that and see where that leads you. It led me to, and it's funny, again, like I said, at the end of the day, it led to an Epiphone, So, yeah, that's one. Another one is every series guitar player should have this model. Now, this is the one that marketing uses. Again, the play, that's why the Play Authentic thing came out, because they thought long and hard. When they thought about that, that is basically saying to you this: every series guitar player should have this model. That's what Play Authentic means. One of the deeper meanings of Gibson's slogan now. And on a deeper note with that, I was thinking about, and I've mentioned this before, that I find it quite fascinating that if you buy a USA Standard, you're still not playing technically authentic because it doesn't have the same build qualities of a custom shop. You would have to purchase a custom shop Gibson in order to quote unquote really be playing authentic. And by authentic, they're trying to say they're tying it in to their earlier designs and the dearness through every lawsuit that they filed since the recent takeover to that design and how that's authentic. Well, but then again, in your USA models, it's not. But oddly enough, there's aspects of the Epiphone model, different woods, I'll grant you that. But there's build qualities of some of these Epiphone models that you can't even get on the USA model. Why can't you get a long neck tenon on the USA model when you can get one on a $500 Epiphone? Ever think about that? So again, this mentality, again, this ties into, as I say, worrying about, or not worrying, but it gets into about not allowing yourself to feed into things like play authentic, because it's a subliminal message. It's saying every serious guitar player should have this model, and that's, if you want to chase that rabbit, go right ahead. I never bought a boat, which are way expensive, so buying these are way cheaper. I put this under the category of excuses that you can give to your wife or significant other. But honey, I didn't buy a boat. It's funny, back in my parents' neighborhood in Los Angeles, I remember I was in LA for a short period. I lived in the States for a very short period back in 2008, 2009, during the Lehman crash. A lot of cats in my folks' neighborhood. I don't know why, but during that Lehman period, because if you guys remember, things were flush. And they bought Hummers and boats. And when the Lehman crash, I don't know if you guys remember the big Hummer craze of like 2008, 2000. I was there. But they bought Hummers and boats, and so they had these huge tank-like cars parked in front of them, which looked ridiculous. And then on top of that, when the Lehman crash happened, they couldn't afford the docking fees. So they had to hitch their boat up to the Hummer and park the boat and the Hummer in front of their house. I kid you not. Saw it with my own eyes. So I guess in that regard, yeah, the boats are, I mean, the guitars are a better deal than a boat. They're way cheaper and a lot easier to put away too. But that's a true story. I really saw the insanity of some people sometimes. It's crazy. And they really did that. I really don't know what happened to those Hummers. Okay, what else do we have here? And then the basic all around, don't have one of those, which basically actually sums up the other ones before that. I just don't, well, I don't have one of those, let me give it a try. And that's when guitars like Harley Benton's come into play, because if you do feel the urge to try a model or a style of guitar that you haven't before, but you don't want to necessarily buy the OG version, or even one of its, counterparts like Epiphones or something like that in the case of Gibsons, and you can always go the Harley Benton route for a lot cheaper. That's what they're basically there for. So I haven't tried a Strat. Let me buy a Strat. I've never tried a Tele, let me try a Tele. Or you've never tried a Les Paul style guitar. That's their main draw and their main appeal with Harley Benton's. I saw a guy this weekend who put up a video on YouTube where he had bought a Harley Benton. He got a Harley Benton. He was playing with a professional traveling stage show. 360 some odd performances he did. He did in a year, and he did it all on a Harley Benton guitar, and he didn't swap anything out other than the input jack. Put in a good input jack so there would be no crackling, there'd be no static issues, no dropouts or anything like that. That's all he did with it, and he toured with that Harley Benton guitar. And it's the first person that I've seen. I mean, granted, he's not a rock star or anything like that, but he's a star in my opinion. I love, those guys who play those stage shows and productions like that and go out on the road and do that. I really admire that. um, you know, and really great players too. And he did it with Harley Benton. So dig that, you know. And he says, I've had no problem with it. So again, you know, I had to, with that little bit of data, I had to put Harley Benton up a little bit of a notch in my brain because this guy is gigging, he's touring and gigging with it. And he's not, and the beautiful thing about it is it's not, you know, a vintage guitar. It's not something that he's really, really super worried about because if something happens to it, he can get another one relatively quickly and easily because they're shipping Harley Benton's within the United States now. From some deal, they bought not a factory, they bought a storage deal there or something they're doing. So you can get them direct within the States. You don't have to do the overseas thing. So yeah, dig that. So yeah, Harley Benton, because of that story, really took a big, you know, kind of upscale kind of not upscale, but it went up a peg in my head because the guy's he's gigging with it, and he's had no issues with it. Everything original, including those pickups that you know that I'm not very pleased with. Whether the Wilkersons. And hadn't changed anything other than the input jack. That's it. I got two more. These are my bonus ones. And this first one also falls into the category of, well, I'll read it. Looks easy to sneak into the house. I told you guys, I don't know if some of you, the new guys, I told you the story while I was living in Singapore. I had a Dan Electro that I put up for sale, and I put it up in the local, what was that, lemon tree or some gum tree. Gum tree is the kind of the classifieds that you go to in Singapore. And this British guy bought it from me or was interested, so we both met at a local shopping mall. And he said when he bought it, good, I can get it home in time before the wife gets in, and I can put it in with the other ones. She'll never know. Hey, what's up? You mean that guy who plays the Fleetwood Mac tribute band? Yes, I believe it is a Fleetwood Mac tribute band. Yeah. Yeah, they got stage projection, you know, the whole nine. I was, you know, really when I was watching that, I was just enthralled with, he went to a luthier shop and they had a discussion about guitar neck radiuses and things of that. And the luthier was saying that, you know, regardless of what it says in the spec page, every neck is going to be different. And I've been saying that too. It's like with these Epiphone 59s. I've held the few that Barry had in his shop, and every one of the necks was different. So there's that. But yeah, that's the one. I believe it was very fascinating. But he tours with Harley Benton. Yeah, but it looks easy to sneak into the house. So this guy literally bought the guitar, and he had to get home before his wife so he could sneak it into his collection because she wouldn't know. He apparently, if he brought it in and she saw it bring him in, she'd be like, "What's that?" But if he put it into his guitar collection, she wouldn't notice it. That was his thinking. So I added that to the list because that too actually happened. That's a real, for some of you guys out there, apparently that's a thing. The last one, it's an artist model. And what did I say here? It's an artist model, may get, a good resale price on it. So, buying an artist model or doing something like that, in my opinion, you're buying it because you either like the artist, you're thinking about flipping the guitar because it's an artist guitar, and we'll use the recent Adam Jones as an example. Even this Joe Bonamassa I have here. Or you fall into a third category, you just think it's a cool guitar, and and that's that. Uh, for the first one, Noon Guitar says, "Yeah, I can't do that anymore. Got past my wife." Yeah, you try to sneak them past. They do start adding up, and they start saying, "Hey, wait a minute, didn't you have three here? This looks like one, two, three, four, five. Where the hell did these two come from?" Yeah, you don't want to be in that situation. But yeah, artist models with the first group, the people who dig in the first and the third groups, that's okay because if you really dig the artist or if you just think it's cool, so I like this 335. I think it's cool. I think it's really pretty. I really do. When I look at the wood and I hold it, it's just a gorgeous thing. And as you guys know, I'm not particularly a Joe Bonamassa fan per se, but I dig this model. I'm actually happy that other than the inside label sticker, it doesn't say Joe Bonamassa anywhere on it. But that second type, the ones who buy because it may gain a resale, yeah, the jury is still out on that one. So we'll see. I'm really curious, actually. I'm fascinated to see where things go with this Adam Jones model. With them releasing 6 sets of 800, you know, that's interesting to me. I did the math on the Joe Bonamassa guitar at $12.99 per guitar. And according to their sites, they're saying that there's limiting the number of that they're going to make of those to 2,000. That comes out to $2.6 million. $12.99 times 20 times 2,000. It's $2.6 million. And I thought to myself, oh, because you have to wonder how much more lucrative in Adam Jones, it's a lot more. So you can do the math. I didn't do the math on that one, but it's it's the first 6 times 800, and then the $12.99 times that figure, and you'll see how much that profit that specs out to in terms of gross. But with grosses like those, I think you can see why. I think that that's more of an attractive deal financially to an artist than it is to even do something like Joe Bonamassa does with the Gibson USA or the custom shop. Because they're only going to make a few of those custom shop models. They're not going to make 2,000 of them. There's not going to be 2,000 Joe Bonamassa custom shop models out there. So that's going to limit the profitability. So yeah, they're going to, even with the markups that are, and there are markups in there, still it's not as attractive of an offer for me if I was an artist than the 2.6 million I would get out. Not, of course, he doesn't get all that. That's not what I'm saying because there's a cost manufacturing. Epiphone's going to take their cut, but I think Joe's cut is a lot more significant than it is in some of the stuff that he does with the custom shop, just purely based on volume. And I'm sure that it's the same deal with the Adam Jones. So I'm a little curious about how that works out, because if it turns out, I don't know how many are available where you guys are at, and if you even, give two craps to look it up. You probably don't, and I'm not asking you to. I don't know how many of those Joe Bonamassa 335s are still left. There's about 4 left here in Europe that I know of on Reverb from shops, and they're still hanging. They're not, the other one that is down there in Utrecht, that hasn't sold. It's still sitting there. That so yeah, but even if they get close to that figure, if it's successful and it proves to be that lucrative, I think that's another reason why going forward you're going to see more expensive artist models, because it's more lucrative. If they can figure out, and they've got it down to a science too. They can spec out because they're all doing it in-house. you know, which is one of the things I like about Epiphones. One of their strong points is they do everything in house. So when they're specking everything out, they know how much a profit margin, you know, and how much they can make on those things. And if they see that the Adam Jones and the Joe Bonamassa type models prove to be a success at that price point and within those numbers that they worked out in production numbers, I think you're going to see a lot. It's another reason why you're going to see a lot more of them. And that's why I said that's the reason why I'm very interested to see where this Adam Jones things go. You know, can I do that real quick? Do you guys mind if I just? I'm terrible at math in my head, but I'm fairly quick on a calculator. Let's see here. Yeah, all right. Hold on. Yeah, can't find my calculator. I have no idea where my calculator. Anyway, somebody out there do it for me. Try to figure out where that works out for with the Adam Jones model. I don't want to sit here stumbling around on this phone looking for my calculator app. But you know, I think it's going to prove to be very lucrative. And sorry about that. I really, you know, this is not my regular phone. I pull it out when I want to read, when I'm reading things, because the screen's a lot bigger than my regular phone. But I get totally lost on it. Sometimes I forget sometimes I leave it on. I'm like, why is this drained? Because I forgot how to turn it off. So find an app on it, forget about it. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're going to see those continued price increases. And I'm very curious to see what happens with that. It's something that I was thinking about. All right, where are we at here, guys? Let me see. 16 and 9 likes. You know, that's very interesting. Again, I can't find my calculator app, but I do know that with 17 viewers and 9 likes, that doesn't add up. So you guys hit those likes for me. Really just, you know, you guys are the ones that give me my likes. There's 200 or 300 people who watch this. Hey, Mike, sorry. Sorry, I'm late. Interesting subject. Hey, don't worry about it. Better late than never. Yeah, those likes really are important. I'll get 200-300 people who watch one of these live streams in the back end, but it's really you guys watching live that dictates how many likes I get. It comes from you guys. So hit the like button for me. Yeah, YouTube is funny. Today I was setting up this live stream. I set it up on my phone app. I choose a subject, like I'm about to get into the final subject, or about, I didn't forget, about Made in Japan Epiphones. And I will really go through all the things that you have to do, the picture, the photo, the title, and all these things, and you scroll through this. And before, when you scroll through it, it used to say advanced settings, and you would go into that, and it would ask you, is this monetize this or not? You used to be able to monetize these live streams from the app. Now I suppose you have to go in and do it manually on if you're doing it on a PC or something like that, not on the app. So I don't know if this live stream is monetized tonight. It doesn't gain a lot, it doesn't make a lot of money, but still, if they cut that out, I don't know why that was taken out of that app. I don't know why that's not there anymore. I find it, you know, very interesting. They're, again, like I said, they're really pushing us to do shorts. By the way, if you guys haven't seen the short that I put up of me playing guitar with my band in Japan, check it out. Just a little clip of me playing, what song? I can't remember, some song, Lonely Fool. Lonely Fool, that's what I was playing. But yeah, you know, they're really pushing the you know, shorts, and they monetize those. But and when you go to do those, you can monetize it. But when you go to do the live streams, you have to now jump through some hoops to do it. So, it's a very interesting thing with YouTube. I don't do this, again, per se, for the money because there is none. I just hit 1,800 yesterday viewers. 18, so creeping up to towards 2,000. There is kind of a trajectory that goes on because once a channel hits 2,000, then it kind of bumps up from there. It's weird. YouTube is attempting to complete TikTok on the shorts. Totally lame. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They want to compete with TikTok, which is an app that's being banned in most countries. It's chasing the dog chasing its tail. It's wagging the tail of the dog. It's just it's stupid. That wasn't what you were built on. And yeah, TikTok came along and they took the younger viewers because that's what it is. It's only it's old farts who are still using YouTube. And they define that anybody, by the way, from the age of 30 and up. So, I'd be offended if I was still 30 and somebody considered me old. But because they're all the 30 and younger demographic has gone over to TikTok, a app that I refuse to use. I've never touched it. I've never looked at it. I've never, ever looked at a TikTok video ever. From an app. I've never looked at one because I know where that app came from. And in this case, this is something that I think is bad. And has not been a positive thing either. So for them to want to emulate that, after all this time, they've lost that market share. It's not like all of a sudden all those TikTok goers are going to say, hey, wow, YouTube is doing shorts too. Let's go back over there. Not going to happen. So yeah, it's totally lame. But again, you got to play the game. So I've got to come up with shorts. So I'm going to cut up a lot of my old concert footage and put up, things of me playing live or stuff like that. In humorous things. But I'll do it. But with the live streams, not with the monetization button not being there, I'm really wondering when I'm done with this, I'll go in. And by the way, my Mac died again. That's why you don't see my logo up here on the screen up here behind me. Yeah, it died again. I'm gonna have to give up on that. There's actually a Mac Mini rack mount from 2017 that I'm looking at that I could just rack mount right here. I'll stick the computer right here in the rack mount, use that as the monitor, So, and they're not expensive either. They're super cheap. They can be had here in the Netherlands. You can get one used, of course, for under $300. So they're not expensive. So, yeah, I'm going to stop pouring anything into this Mac. It's gone. I've already backed everything up, but my other Mac, my backup Mac that I use just for streaming, because that's my streaming computer, and I actually plug that into my big. It's ridiculous. I have such huge TV in the next room. You would think to yourself, my God, why does this guy have such a big TV? But I don't go to the movie theaters, so I like to try to give myself that theater experience. But I use that Mac as my streaming Mac. It plugs directly into that. So that thing is lousy for doing any kind of editing or anything like that. It struggles with it. So I am going to have to do something about that here soon. But I want to talk a little bit about Made in Japan Epiphones. Noodlin will know what I'm talking about because on the My Les Paul forum, there was a discussion this week, topic, and somebody shared a picture of one of their Made in Japan Epiphone guitars. Because again, he was getting into a discussion of which one has a maple top as opposed to doesn't, and all those things that come up. And it's one thing I will note, it's really cool. I don't know if you feel the same way, Noodlin, to have so many people who have such knowledge and that you could go somewhere like that and ask a question, and pretty much we'll get a solid answer, and that's really great. I love forums like that one for that very reason. And then sometimes somebody will bring up something that you go, oh yeah, it'll put a light bulb in your head or remind you something like, um, the Les Paul Tribute Pluses came up. You guys, I had one that I gave to my brother. He has in Utah. The only reason I didn't like that guitar, and the specs on that Tribute Plus, by the way, are very similar to the 59 in a lot of ways, but I didn't like the neck. I don't like slim tape, 60s slim taper necks. I cannot stand those for some reason. I don't have particularly big hands. I guess I do, pretty big mitts for a guy my size, but slim taper necks and me just don't get along. I don't like a 58 baseball neck either. So 59, early 60s is kind of my sweet spot. But yeah, bring up about the Les Paul Tribute Pluses. If you guys haven't checked those out, you may want to look those up. They came with 57 classics stock with a case. Great tops on them. But this other guy was showing his Made in Japan Epiphone. Now, these Epiphones that were made in Japan, they're kind of special. They are that good. To answer the question, are Made in Japan guitars that good? Some of them really are. Some of them were really spec'd out the same as Gibson USA models. Dare I say, in some of the elite models, the Epiphone elite models, they were spec'd out like custom shops. Finding the right neck is how I've just find necessary guitar. We'll add that to the list. let me write that down. Finding the right neck. Yeah, that's another one. Like I said, I bought that guitar, that Epiphone. I had it for a little while, and then I went and got my hands on a Gibson, and that had a 50s neck. And I said, no, that's just gonna work. It never felt right to me. There's something about it. It wasn't the thinnest neck. The thinnest neck that I have, the slimmest 60 slim taper I ever had, I think I told you guys, was on my Gibson Les Paul Classic from 1993. That thing had it was ridiculous. It's like Jimmy Page, he took sandpaper and really slimmed his neck down because he didn't like a thick neck. He was the opposite. It felt like I imagined Page's neck, just like a little itty bitty bit of wood left there, and I hated it. But I still bought the guitar because it was a Les Paul Classic from '93, and it was kind of a collector's thing. So there was a little bit of that in it, but I never played it really because I hated the neck. But yeah, the Made in Japan Epiphone models, the elitist, a lot of those models, some of their 335s and 339s, particularly the ones that were made in the mid-90s, a lot of those were made to exact Gibson specs. Everybody says, well, why doesn't Epiphone, spec out their guitars? They were still metric, by the way. I do believe they were not. The hardware was still metric spec, but things like tops, the electronics, the pickups, rosewood fingerboards on them, just all the way around they were constructed just a little bit better than their USA Epiphone. They're not USA, but their regular Epiphone brethren that was being produced. And so I bring this subject up because it again gets into another thing that I was thinking. I had to think about these things because I want to remain relevant and interesting during our conversations here. But I really do think about these things quite a bit because I read something and I have something called a file. If I read or I see something that is interesting, oh, my light died on me again. It must be midnight. The thing only has an hour charge on it. If I read or see something that doesn't fit anything or is an interesting fact, I'll put it in my home file. I just file it away in my head. If something comes along, the collaborated or something like that, it comes out of the home file. If nothing comes out or if it doesn't collaborate later, I usually generally forget it. But in my home file, really, a lot of people would say to themselves, well, why is it that Epiphone never came out with models that were similar to the USA models? And they have. It's called the elitist ones. And, in my home file, I always wondered, with that being the case, I mean, with these guitars being made with excellent woods, you can't even get into the lower value Asian woods because they were using really high quality woods with these elitist models. If you check their prices on Reverb, if you looked at an elitist Les Paul from that period, they are not pricing any more than they normally would. In other words, they are finely made, excellent Epiphone guitars, but they're not made to the same standards and maybe even a little bit better than the USA ones, but they're still not drawing the kind of value that the USA models are. And they're not cheap. don't get it twisted. They're not cheap, but they're in the $1,500 range if you find a good one. If you live in Japan and you hunt around enough, you can get it for even cheaper than that. I know that for a fact. But it's interesting to me. Great woods, not your standard, questionable quasi mahoganies, as some people think it, or Naito, the word that means just generally wood, according to some YouTube people. No, it was using really high quality mahogany, really high quality maple, and rosewood and necks in terms of the fretboard material. No, it was high quality wood, but they're still not drawing the kind of value that you would think that they would be getting because of those reasons. You can still get them for 15. Les Paul's standards are still in the 1800 range, and they go up from there in the used market. Not a big difference, but when it really gets down to nuts and bolts, that's just how it is. So even if Epiphone, my point of this is saying, and I throw it out there as the last topic for tonight, that even if Epiphone word Lepiphone. Even it sounds like a Chibson, a Lepiphone. Maybe Epiphones made in Lithuania. I'm sorry, I digress. Even when made with pretty good stuff, to spec, they're still not, going to draw the kind of cachet that a Gibson USA model, built similarly or even maybe not as better than. And that's just, the reality of it. Some people out there, and I myself included at one time would have thought, well, if they just make it, with, high quality woods, they make it spec, got a great top on it, all, X, Y, and Z, that it should draw a same kind of premium, but it doesn't. And so, I say all these things, what's this? The Epiphone Limited Edition is a great guitar, probably the best they ever made. No, I was just talking about ones they made better in Japan in the 90s. The elitist guitars were better. They were better than the 59s because the wood was better. And the construction wasn't multi-pieces. It was a true two-piece maple top. There was no pieces of maple and then a veneer on top of it like the 59. And the back, and I do believe maybe a one-piece back on those, one-piece neck for sure. No, those elitist Epiphone models from the 90s were made in better than the 59 or the Tribute Plus that I was talking about, 60s Tribute Plus. They were made better. Uh, even still, even with all of that being said, they still don't command the same kind of prices that USA Standard does. So, that's something. I don't know what you do with that. Again, it's something in my file. I don't know what you draw from that. I'm not drawing any conclusions or making any kind of statements. I'm just throwing it out there that's just the fact of the matter. That's the way it kind of lays out. If you ever need a topic idea, I think you'd be interested to hear your discussion on. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last one. Could you repeat that one again? I'd love to read that. Because yeah, I'd love to get an idea for a topic. I might actually have something on that. But yeah, I throw it out there because it's just interesting to me, guys. It's fascinating to me that even with the same spec out, it's just not going to have that kind of cash. Let me see. If you ever need a topic idea here, if you didn't discuss that, like a musician, you ever, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about that. That's a long topic. Because, there's this thing going out there in the States right now that I'm seeing on YouTube called Passport Brothers. Guys are getting passports and they're leaving the States to date women other than American women, which for some reason I've been gone for a while now seems to be an anathema. I'll leave that up to you American guys to tell me exactly why that is, because I've been removed from that for 3 decades now. But in any case, it's funny because that's such a stupid term to me actually. And don't act like it's something new. They put it out there, Passport Brothers, as a term like this is something new. No, I and a lot of other guys were the original Passport Brothers. Trust me, we were musicians that were gigging back in the 80s, early 80s, and the 90s in Asia and Europe. Now, I never caught the European leg of that kind of gigging. My Uncle Carlton did. My Uncle Carlton went all through Europe playing guitar for different groups and with Fats Domino. So he did Europe, I did Asia. But I'll talk about that sometimes. I'll talk about musicians. I'll talk about some of those stories. It was Wild Wild West, guys. I think back upon it, I was young. I was 27. So 26, 27 when I first got into it, so youngish. And so my capacity to put up with a lot of bullshit was a lot bigger than it is now. I don't think I would put up with a lot of the things that that life, style brought now. I don't see myself doing that. But yeah, I'll talk about that. And I'll talk about the other musicians and how it turned out for them. I will say this much in closing tonight as my last little subject, since you asked and it leads into it, and I'm thinking about it. I'm seeing a diminishment in work all the way around for a lot of my musician friends. We need some Uncle Carlton story, please, Mike. Well, yeah, Mickey, I dig that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get Uncle Carlton on here. So we're going to get. There is one cool thing about this new YouTube software that they just put up is that you can now do Let's Go Live together. So he and I'll figure out how to make that work, and we'll get him on. Trust me, he's up. That guy sleeps I think he sleeps from about 6 a.m. to around 2. That's he's still, once you get caught into that musician lifestyle and they really live it, even I've somewhat domesticated myself since my time. But if you just continue on with that, those traits go on forever. So, but he'll be up, trust me. Even in the States at this time, he'll be up. But we'll do that. We'll do some more Carlton. And I'll talk a little bit more about touring back in the days. It wasn't all great. I tell some of the funny stories But there was a lot of pitfalls. There was a lot of stuff you had to look out for. You know, I haven't even told you my Yakuza stories, and I mean, like, seriously, for real, you know, pinky cutting Yakuza stories that I haven't even got into. And so there was a lot of aspects of that. Yeah, most of it good. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sit here and act like it was all a bad time. I had a great time actually. I made a lot of money actually, and had a lot of freedom. It's very rare that you find yourself in life in that kind of dichotomy, that kind of situation. So it was a golden age. But I am seeing that a lot of my current musician friends, my father was a huge Dot Fat Sam. Oh well, then you know my uncle Carlton. You know Carlton McWilliams. And yeah, we'll get him on and we'll get him to talk about it. Yeah, Mickey, I will do that for you. I owe you. So, by the way, Mickey, I have a pedal I'm going to send to you. I have your address from what you sent me, so I'm going to send that out this week to say thank you for this one. I really dig this one. But I got something for you. So I'll send you an email on that. But yeah, we'll do Uncle Carlton. I want to talk to him. I'm gonna have to, guys. I try to run a pretty pretty PG-13 kind of podcast here, live stream. But when we get my Uncle Carlton on, he's not going to edit himself, so I'll ask for your forgiveness in advance. 'Cause he's pretty raw. He's going to tell it like it is. I clean it up a little bit. It was no less raw than it was for me than with him, but there is that. But yeah, a lot of my friends are losing a lot of work. It's really in the production and things like that. And there were a lot of musicians that I saw in Singapore when I got there. So I got there in 2015. And these were some of the original guys who had gone there in the 80s and the 90s. And they married, a local, wherever they were at, in this case, Singapore. And they were still trying to do the nightclub thing. And by the time I got there in 2015, the nightclub scene in Singapore was dying. It was dying. The gigs and the things that this one bass player, I won't say his name, but he's a good friend, Reggie Andrews, my mentor, who passed away last year. But that's another subject for another time. I wasn't aware until recently that Reggie passed away. I don't know why nobody told me, or anyway, that's on me. But he stayed in there too long, and he had a regular teaching gig during the daytime, and barely hanging in there gigs at night with the clubs that he used to play at. And a lot of those guys, the drummer guy that I knew, he split for California 2017, 2018, before COVID hit. When COVID hit in Singapore around the time that I left, that was it. That marked the end of the nightlife in Singapore. And now I understand, even when things have gone back up again, all those clubs are gone. And he lost his teaching job as well because he wasn't a native. They decided, hey, why do we have this foreigner teaching in this music school? We need to have a local. And that happens because there has to be a certain Singapore, there has to be a certain percentage of your staff that are local Singaporeans. And if if you're on the foreign side of that list, you're going to get bumped. And he got bumped. So he lost all his night gigs and he lost his daytime gig. He hung in there too long, is the point of that story. Trying to hang on to that scene that happened back there in the day. And he really was. I'm not exaggerating this because he was drunk every night. I mean, geez, you're these guys 10 years older than me, or at least he looked like, maybe less. But just, trying to live, not letting go of that time. There was a time and a place for that kind of thing, and it was called the 90s. And if you try to hang on to that, then the result of it is you're totally busted. And I'm sorry for him. I don't know how he'd end up with that, but that's what happened to him. He held on too long. So there is that danger of holding on too long, but unfortunately things change. and you have to adapt with the times. You have to do something else. And, you know, if you're going through hell, like Churchill said, keep going. I've changed, I've adapted. I gave that life, I gave that gigging life up. I gave that whole lifestyle up to go into the studio to work, which is my first love. But even that type of work is starting to diminish. So you have to change and adapt from there as well. So yeah, I'll talk about that. I'll tell you some of my stories, and we'll get Uncle called on. We'll do that. All right, guys. I think that is enough for this evening. Do you have any Les Pauls? No, not anymore. Not currently. I have sold all of my Les Pauls. At one time, I had 5. And I sold them all. And now Gibson Les Paul. I have an Epiphone Les Paul 59 standard. That is the cat's meow. I love it more than all of those other Gibsons that I had before. I love it far more. It sounds better. It feels better. I just like it more than the Gibsons that I had. One of those things. Oh, you do? Me too. Yes, sir. And they're good. Gibsons are great, and I'm not saying I'm not going to have another Gibson again. I'm not anti-Gibson at all. I'm just saying if one comes along and there's that rare opportunity that I actually have the money to put into something like that, and I feel that there's something there, I'll get another Gibson again. But I don't see the need because that 59 Epiphone really fits that niche, and the Made in Japan Epiphones, if I could get my hand on one of those, even more so. You know, from a price standpoint, you know, I could go $1,500 for a 93 or 94 Epiphone Elite guitar, no problem, because you know I know the build on that is solid. It's awesome. And I can get the same kind of quality almost as a custom shop out of that for way less, significantly less. So that's just my kind of viewpoint on Les Pauls. It's not so much about what it says on the headstock as about the value. So expensive Gibson standards are around. Well, you know, Les Paul standards, you can get, you know, it really depends. Here at the Gibson Custom Shop, EU shop, they have demo models. I've seen Les Paul standards on there as low as $1,750 they've had on some. Now, I don't know what kind of damage were done to them, but yeah, they had them for as low as that when they first opened up the shop. Now, it's not so much, but when they first opened up that shop, oh, man, I wish I had the money at that time because they had some screaming deals. That would have been the opportunity where I wish I had that money aspect of that equation because I would have definitely bought a Les Paul. Yeah, Les Pauls are all over the place, you know. You just got to look around. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I said, you know, but again, you got to play 4 or 5 of them just to have a Les Paul for the sake of having a Les Paul. If I'm not happy with the neck, it's out of here. Just like the Epiphone, I don't like the neck, it's out of here. If I don't like the way it sounds, if I keep swapping pickups in it, and you know, these pickups sound good in this guitar, they sound good in this one. For some reason, they don't sound good in this one. Guess what? There's something wrong with that guitar. You know, so that'll go as well. You know, I'm pretty. Everybody here knows me. I'm really going for tone, and right now I'm getting a killer tone out of that 59 Les Paul. That 59 is just awesome. It's a tone machine, and it does everything that I need. So not really feeling Gibsons right now. All right, guys, I think that's enough for this evening. I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up and for taking the time to listen to me ramble on. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you guys have a good week this week. John, what we got here? One more. Yes, I've heard that from a lot of people. I've heard you try buy one. I'm new here. I was very well. Oh, yeah, John, try before you buy because you got to vibe with it. You got to vibe with it, man. You know, it's like I said, it's when we were talking earlier. I don't know if you caught that when I was talking about the placebo effect. You know, you got to vibe with it. It's got to talk to you. It's got to speak to you. you know, I have one Gibson Les Paul that I do miss, and that was my Gold Top Les Paul Classic. I've had two Gold Tops, and this was the one, not the P91, but the one that I had that had regular humbuckers in it. I do miss that one. That is the one. I bought that in Tokyo. That's the one that I am sorry that I let go, because I think that if I had experimented a little bit more with the pickups, I could achieve the same thing that I could have with this 59. But of all the Gibsons I had, that's the only one I truly miss, and even that one I don't miss that much. So yeah, there's that, guys. Anyway, try it before you buy it. Yeah. Cup of coffee tonight. I was drinking pear juice. Pear juice this time of year in this part of the world is real pear juice. It is like drinking the nectar of the gods. I love it. I can't wait to get out to the countryside here, about an hour drive, maybe next month. Spend a weekend, because they have some of the best. Where are you from? Oh, I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I'm a LA native. California native. California born, LA native. But I left Los Angeles in 1995 to go on a 3-hour tour. Isn't that how Gilligan's Island started out? It was a 3-hour tour. Somehow we spent 30 years on this island. That's 18 years on that island. Yeah. Yeah, dig that, man. I really do appreciate you. I do appreciate you guys showing up, and for new people signing in and joining in, guys. Enjoy your week, and I will. I don't know what I'm going to film. Well, I'm going to do a review this week of this little Heat with my Mac down. I'll have to figure out exactly how I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll just demo it through the amp. What the hell? Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'll just do it through the amp. But I do want to show this off a little bit, because I really dig it. I kind of dig it. And as a matter of fact, I'll do a head-to-head maybe with the Series 7, so you guys can hear that little bit of tonal difference. So that's coming up, God willing. You guys have a good week and take care of yourselves. Night.